So without any further ado, we'll kick off the show. We have with us John Moses. He is a Chelmsford School Committee member and also a candidate for re-election. Appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's always good.
Yeah, so this is an exciting time. I know you've been serving on the board for the last 3 years. Was that your first term?
That was my first term, absolutely.
How do you feel like it went?
I feel like it was good. I think overall we definitely had a lot of really positive things happen within the district. 22 new classrooms, which we've talked about, which we actually managed to do under budget. Refilling some of those coordinator positions that were lost in prior years just because of budget constraints. Balanced budget for 3 years. Haven't had to go to town for money. We did have some challenges, but just like anything, you just work through them and you try to get some kind of positive outcome. And I feel like that's what we've done the past 3 years.
Now, when you first decided to run for public office, what was kind of the motivating factor for you?
It was pretty straightforward. We had just gone to town meeting and asked the town for $500,000 for the schools, and at the same time we didn't have full-day kindergarten, which we were one of only about 18 districts in the entire state that didn't have it, and that was a real motivator for me. I have a daughter in the school system. She's 8 now, and she was 5 when I first ran, and I have a son who is about to enter the full-day kindergarten program next year. So the original was my daughter. My daughter was really what made me run.
Wow. Now, was Superintendent Lang already on board when you were elected, or was that part of your...
He was. He has since, though, gone for a new contract, so I was on the negotiating committee to keep Dr. Lang on board for a 5-year term through the school committee.
Well, things seem to have been righted from a financial standpoint, right? Talk a little bit about that. I know at some point you guys have gone through and kind of revamped how we do our accounting processes. Mm-hmm. How does that all work now, and have you seen a difference from what we've had in the past?
Sure. So one of the things that we did was we actually all went on the same accounting system called Munis, which was important that one accounting system can talk to another. They can speak to each other. We put some controls in place. We have external audits now in all the budgets. Dr. Lang's background was in finance, and he actually put in place better line items inside of the budget itself, so it was easier to track where money was moving to, which is really important in public office. We're not budget experts. Your first year on a school committee, I mean, the budget is thousands of lines, and trying to understand that is difficult. But a lot of clarification on where money's going to go. We vote on every money move, so we're well aware of where the money's going and why it's going somewhere. And just a general better communication between superintendent and the school committee.
Well, it looks like it's going pretty well right now, although you never know, things can change. I know one of the things that caused a lot of problems in the past is special education costs and things like that. How does that all work, and has it been easier for you guys to know whether people are in district or out of district?
Yeah, they do a very good job of tracking that, and we actually have a surplus in that particular line of the budget. Just generally speaking, we've done a very good job of squirreling away additional funds just to account for if somebody's in district or out of district. But we do a good job of tracking that. Dr. Lang and Linda Hirsch do just great work in making sure that the process behind it is easy to track and easy to understand.
One of the things that you do as a school committee member is you kind of craft policy. Mm-hmm. Have there been any particular policies that you've been involved in over the past 3 years that would be worth mentioning?
I think we've actually done nothing specific. We've actually done a full overhaul of the policy to become more in line with the state laws. We worked with the state to actually work through every single policy this year. And the most important part for me was getting those policies online in a searchable format. So those will now be easy to access through the website. You can actually search through them. It's not scanned PDFs. And now we're actually referencing the law that applies to a policy, because the law supersedes a local policy. And it was important to get all of those things in a single document and easy to find for parents or school committee or any resident or town meeting rep.
Technology is kind of changing everything. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of see the wave of the future going for schools, and is that something you guys ever discuss at your school committee meetings?
Sure. So we actually are implementing a one-to-one technology program right now in the district, which is a really powerful tool where every student from 5th grade till high school is going to have their own laptop assigned from the school. It's going to be a Google Chrome laptop. We're also implementing Google Classrooms, so a single place for teachers to put curriculum and homework and students to access. The thing I really that really stood out for me on that program is disadvantaged students don't always have access to something like a laptop, right? So it equalizes education across all of those students from 5th grade till the day they graduate school. And that was a really important piece of the technology. We're improving wireless. We now have carts that have mobile tablets for kids to use. And in this economy and where these kids are going to grow to, that technology and access to that technology is just critical for success.
As a parent of kids, I've seen them, roll out some unique device type technology. So kind of similar to Facebook, but very personalized for the individual student. My wife and I can get assignments and see my child actually interacting in the classroom, which I think has really kind of brought like a new element to the educational relationship that never kind of existed before, which I think is great.
Yeah. And as a parent, I get to see it too. So we have, and I think you're going to like the name, the iReady system right now.
Love it.
I love it. So every time I look at it, I think of you. But no, my kids access it. I can see what they're doing. My daughter's current 3rd grade teacher actually texts out the homework every day, so she has an alert. So I actually know what my daughter. So if I ask her and she says I don't have homework, I know she's fibbing and she has to do her homework.
So one of the conversations I had recently, because I'm in real estate, I was speaking to a woman and I said, if you went and moved to another area that you knew nothing about, the cities and towns in that state, what would be your motivating factor for where you would want to live? And one of the things that came up was education, and obviously the school system is usually the driving force for where people live. And I said, well, how would you determine whether a town would be worthy of you selecting? And a lot of it comes down to these online websites that rank schools. Does the school district ever look at what their rankings are in some of those websites and how they can improve upon some of the metrics that go into that to maybe bolster the school system here in Chelmsford?
Yeah, so I will say a lot of those websites are kind of a pay-to-play type of environment. So you actually, I don't recommend to look at those websites. I mean, you can, and you should have multiple sources of information. If you really want to know where a school district does well, you can look at the DESE rankings, and what they actually do is they combine you with other like districts. So if you have similar population, similar English language learners, and based on those rankings, you can see where a town sits with comparable districts, and that's free to have. There's no pay to play for that. That is all done through auditing on the state side, and that's one of the reasons people move to Chelmsford is we're actually slightly underfunded comparatively to our districts, but we generally rank in the top 1 or 2 in math and in reading and all those other things that are really important. I would absolutely recommend parents look at DESE. That is probably the best single source of information for is it a good school district or not. And the other thing is you always want to look at the financial status of a district. Are they running their budget well? Finances aren't particularly engaging subjects, but well-run districts run their money well. That absolutely filters down to student achievement.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because I do feel like Chelmsford is underfunded in comparison to neighboring cities and towns. I always look at Westford and I look at Billerica and I look at the amount of Chapter 70 funding that those communities receive above and beyond Chelmsford.
Yeah.
I know it's been a long fight. I know Sal Lapoli, when he ran, said he was going to try to fix it, and that didn't happen. Is that a fight that Chelmsford's finally just given up on, or is it something that we continue to try to chip away at and see if we can make some sort of difference?
So I actually think I promised the same thing. I think I came out here 3 years ago and I said we're gonna try to fix Chapter 70. Unfortunately, the way Chapter 70 works, there are a lot of political stakeholders, and a lot of them have direct representation. A town like Westford has its own rep, and as you know, Chelmsford has 5 reps. We don't have a direct representation, but even if you did have your own rep, somebody in Westford or another town that is overfunded isn't going to give up its funding or vote yes for something like that. They're not going to alienate their own constituency. I mean, really, that has to come from some kind of legislative overhaul. I wouldn't say we should give up on it. I would say maybe we look at a different path for the way we've done districting. I would love to see another single rep in Chelmsford again someday, which would help. Or maybe it comes from the executive branch working with the legislative branch. But again, a lot of stakeholders and people just don't want to give up money.
Well, I've heard that there's other ways to get money, and it might be through some sort of state aid or something, but it's not guaranteed that it's going to come to the school system because it's got to come through the town first, and then the town manager would then have to reallocate it towards the schools, right? Is that?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. So we actually get our budget recommendation. We give our budget recommendation to the town, and they say yes or no. So Dr. Lang in the town work really hard to come up with a number that they think is reasonable, and then we go to town meeting, and they actually release the money. There is a lot of state money. There's and I can't remember the name of it, but there's a $5 million pot of money that the governor would have to release. That I've gone several times to state representation and said, hey, what are we doing with this $5 million? How do we use this in local government to improve student outcomes? How do we use this money? And that's a fight that we're actually currently working on. But you're right, there's always forms of money and there's always places to get it. It's just a matter of asking a lot and knocking on a lot of doors.
Are there things that Chelmsford could use additional funding for? I mean, are we understaffed at this point, or is there areas that if you had an extra $5 million, you would apply it to?
If we had an extra man, that's a good question. We have a couple of more coordinator positions that we'd like to fill. We always want to look at ways we could just improve general education. For me, if I saw a $5 million windfall, what I would want to see is curriculum work, things that directly move towards student achievement. I think other than that specifically, I just feel like we've funded well. We've been able to squirrel away enough money in case there's an emergency. So there's nothing specific I'd like to see, but if I were to see something, a windfall of $5 million, I would love to be able to see it just apply to student achievement. I think the kids are the most important part of the whole equation.
Just to digress, because a lot of people may or may not, I mean, it's been 3 years since you ran for public office. What's your background? What do you do for work, and how did you come out to be a school committee member?
So I'm an engineer in the real world outside of the school committee, and I work a regular full-time job. I'm also an Army reservist, about to retire though. I have 23 years in the reserves, so I'm about to call that. But yeah, my life really is just focused around my children, and I've always believed in public service, whether it was with the military or here in town. And I have found the past 3 years that this kind of service is some of the most rewarding service you can do. A lot of people don't realize everything that is done at a local level affects you directly, as opposed to presidential elections or state elections. And I think I've had a positive impact. And I feel like the current school committee we're on and the past members, we've all had a pretty positive impact on the children, on the district parents and taxpayers.
You've served with some pretty incredible people. I know that Al Thomas is still on the board with you. You've also served with Sal Lapoli. Have you learned different things from different people that you've worked with?
Yeah, I will say Mike Rigney calls me every once in a while. Mike Rigney will call me, and he's always big on understanding the budget. And I learned a lot from him about why are you not asking questions about this? You should be asking about this. Why don't you do it this way? I liked watching Sal Lapoli because he had a good voice, and he just understood how to speak in front of an audience and make a cohesive point. And then somebody like Al Thomas is somebody that I've learned a lesson that long terms of service gives you a lot of credibility, and it takes a long time to do that. And it's part of the reason I ran again. He asked me, are you going to run? And I said, I'm not sure. I have kids. It's a lot of time commitment. And he said, you should absolutely run. And if I ever want to be somebody like Al Thomas, I have to continue to give back to the community.
Do you feel like you have a new agenda or new ideas or anything that you're looking to hopefully accomplish over the next 3 years different than the last 3 years?
Yeah, I think the next few years, again, we have a coordinator position we want to fill. Right now, it's been very quiet. We actually have 3 new contracts that are up for negotiation. I'm on the teacher's contract. That's the who I'm negotiating with. I just want to really just keep fiscally conservative, make sure we're putting aside money, and just managing the superintendent the right way. No big projects except for maybe the new school project, which we're continually putting in applications for. We were declined again last year, so we weren't entered into the program. But we're just going to keep trying to make our case, and we're going to fine-tune our case until we could eventually get at least admitted to the program to be evaluated for either a new school or a renovation project. I think that's been my biggest thing. People don't realize once you're accepted to the program, you're evaluated, they give you the best options, but it's a 7 to 10 year process from the day you get accepted. And people think you get in and you build a school, and it's just not how it works, and we really need to get in the queue in order to do that.
Yeah, and I've heard it could take several years. I mean, even multiple applications before they're willing to take on your project, right?
Yeah, we're on our 3rd application now. So this is going to be our 3rd application for it. And some of the towns, I want to be fair, needed schools more than we do. They do. Some people have stronger cases. We'll get there, though. I think the average age of our buildings is over 60 years old at this point. At some point, maintenance becomes more expensive than continuously doing capital projects to repair old buildings. Becomes kind of a white elephant, and you're just putting good money on top of bad buildings. I would love to get a new high school and then kind of redistrict. One project I do want to get fixed this year, and I've talked to the superintendent about, is we have kids in the biome that end up getting split off into 2 different middle schools, and I think I'd love to get that fixed. It's only like 10 kids, and it's very disruptive to them. That's not a big project, but I think it has an outsized effect on those 10 to 12 kids that end up at the Parker versus the McCarthy.
Is it because of a districting issue, or how does it?
I have no idea.
Wow.
I was here when I got here, and I always thought it was strange, and my wife and I would talk about it, and we're like, are we going to the Parker or the McCarthy? And it's just an odd discussion to have when somebody goes to school from kindergarten all the way through 4th grade, and then you go. And everybody has their social groups built. I think it would have a positive effect on that small group of families. But again, just because it's a small group doesn't mean it's not important. So that's one of the things I'd love to get fixed before next school year.
A lot of times you get like those one-off situations, right, where somebody wants to go to a particular school, but they're not in a district. What's kind of your feeling on that? I know that there's been kind of a zero tolerance is kind of a harsh way to put it, but kind of a zero.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. So we put policy in place to manage the superintendent and to keep him within the bounds. I do not believe one-offs are typically appropriate. And the reason is you don't put policy in place for people that you like. So if somebody comes in and they have but they have some kind of story as why they want to go to one school versus the other, that's fine, but I don't believe you should make that determination. I don't think that's up to the superintendent. I don't think he's authorized to make that determination. And the real problem is when you talk about it, you expose yourself to things like litigation. So if you were to come in and you had a story and you could just go back and you could come back with a lawyer and say the reason he didn't do it is because I'm purple and that person's green and you like green people better. And it's just not an appropriate, I believe in the district is what it is. The superintendent is not authorized via the policy right now to do that, and we should stay within those bounds.
Provides fairness.
It does. And the thing is we've had districts, and even in Chelmsford in the past, that did the same kind of trading, and then the problem is now you have to find the kids and they're in the wrong school, and you're doing political favors for somebody. Oh, I know a person, so you get to go to the school you want. It just opens the door for a lot of bad behavior. And if there was somebody that had a really good case, I think they should bring that to the policy subcommittee and address that with the policy, and then propose it, and we could debate it out on the table where everybody can see it, let people come in and give their opinion, and then we can make a decision as a group what we think is right.
Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to have you look at the camera, and as Dennis Reddy would always want, have you ask the voter for the vote.
I hope you'll come out next April and vote for me, John Moses, for re-election for school committee.
Awesome. We appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll have you on again soon.
It's great seeing you.